Alright, what's going on, guys? We are now a little over a week removed from the closed network test of Elden Ring Nightreign. And I don't know about you guys, but all I want is just to play more. The game turned out to be actually much more deep and fun than I imagined it would be based off the initial trailer. Even in the 3-hour sessions of the network test, I felt like that wasn't enough time to truly grasp what all this game has to offer. And if you thought, oh well, this just feels like a mod of Elden Ring, well, there was surprisingly a lot here to make Nightreign very unique and separate it from the base game. And with that comes a lot of things that a lot of players missed by assuming it to be so similar. So today I want to go through some very interesting discoveries found in the Elden Ring Nightreign closed network test. And you know how these videos go. If I showed you something today that you didn't already know, then be sure to leave a like on the video. But as we get started today, if you want to stay up to date on all things Elden Ring Nightreign, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. And now let's get into it. Let's start off with something easy today. Firstly, as many of you know, Elden Ring Nightreign introduced a lot of the legendary weapons from the base game of Elden Ring, offering them as extremely rare loot drops from killing bosses in the overworld, and getting a hold of even one of these can drastically change the outcome of your run. Now, fortunately, Nightreign offers a training ground in the Roundtable Hold where you can experiment with all the weapons the game has to offer. And if you thought these were simply carbon copies of the ones we had in the base game, well, that's where you'd be wrong. Many of these legendary armaments have undergone some substantial upgrades. First of all, you'll now notice that they all come with passive buffs, such as Power of the Golden Lineage and Power of the Queen. But in addition to that, many of them have seen new and improved attacks, and I'll show you a few of my favorites. The first one that's really cool is the Bastard Star's Flail. Not the best in the base game, but in Nightreign, attacks with it now leave these little purple energy mines that stick to the enemy and explode after a short time. The Sword of Night and Flame now retains its elemental buff after using one of the two elemental attacks. So the fire attack gives it a fire buff, and the magic attack now makes it retain a magic elemental buff, which is very useful. The Sacred Relic Sword has a new attack where charged heavies now create this massive ring of light that does an area of effect damage. And one of the coolest ones is actually the Grafted Dragon, which now upon critical attacks spews pools of fire around the arena that do a lot of stagger damage. But there are a lot of changes with the legendary weapons such as the Giant's Red Braid, which now coats you in fire that damages nearby enemies if using the weapon art. But if you messed around with many of these legendary weapons, what was your favorite change that they did in Nightreign? Let me know down below. But the legendary armaments weren't the only things that received some much needed upgrades in Nightreign. Specifically, bows, whips, and shields got a pretty substantial upgrade in the fact that they can now do a riposte and a critical strike on a staggered enemy. You can see in the clip here that has made its rounds on the internet that after Margit gets staggered, the character switches to a bow, and you can actually see them put the bow in the offhand and pull out a single arrow and use that to stab the enemy. Now, it was also noted by many people that you can also do this with whips and shields, though I couldn't find any footage of that online, and I certainly wasn't running around with a shield as my primary weapon in the few short hours we had to play. So any of y'all bow mains out there, how are you feeling about this change? And anybody with a whip or shield or riposte clip, definitely send us the link so we can check that out. But while we're on the topic of bows, I'm sure by now you're acquainted with the 4 heroes we got to play with in the network test: Wilder, Duchess, Guardian, and Recluse. But in the final game of Nightreign, there will be 8 heroes to choose from. And in the initial trailer for Nightreign, we actually got to see 7 out of the 8 heroes. The 5th being this tank build with a great axe and a goat horn helmet. The 6th, this katana wielding miracle character, who I can't wait to try. And then the final one we got to see was actually an archery build. And surprisingly, we got to see a lot of him. But a new piece of information we got is actually his name, thanks to a new listing of the collector's edition which comes with these cards, one of which lists Iron Eye. So how do you feel about that name? Iron Eye sounds pretty cool to me, but I'm also curious what the others are going to be named. Maybe y'all can drop some ideas down in the comments below. Now, although in Elden Ring Nightreign there are a ton of combinations you can pull off with the heroes, but not all strategies are created equal, and as it often goes with games like these, people want to know what's the most overpowered. Well, it seems like that hasn't changed from the base game of Elden Ring, because one status effect stands head and shoulders above the rest. That, of course, being, no surprise, Bleed. And you can see right here just how fast we're shredding Gladius with simply the Reduvia. The Bleed is proccing over and over again, absolutely melting Gladius's health bar, And this isn't even the most optimized way to do this. Now, given the short time we had with the network test, true testing has yet to be done, but it does seem like Bleed combined with 2 Duchess characters is definitely the most overpowered, at least for the network test. And as you know, Duchess's ability can repeat actions and damage against bosses for a short duration. Now, when that's used on a Bleed proc, well, you can see how damage stacks up extremely fast, and with 2 Duchesses, it's even faster. Personally, I wouldn't recommend going with 3 just by how much of a glass cannon Duchess is. You want at least one character that can take a hit and be able to revive, particularly either Wilder or Guardian. But have you tried out this strategy? And do you have one that's better? At least in the time I played, whenever we had 2 Duchesses on the team running Bleed builds, it was a very smooth run to say the least. But now let's step away from gameplay for a second and get into the story aspect of things. Now, I'm sure you noticed that on the second night, when you're going to face the boss, the arena for that fight is under a massive spectral tree. This serves as your marker to find where the boss is going to emerge, along with the circle closing around you. Now, aside from just looking really cool, there is a secret in these trees. Now, given the fast pace of Nightreign, it's likely that you missed it, because in order to actually see this, you not only need to look up, but in order to get a real view, you'll need to be pretty far away, and with the storm closing in, that's unlikely. But if you ever did get the chance to see the tree in full view, then you might have noticed that at its center is a divine tower. Kind of like the shadow tree in the DLC, it appears to be 2 trees wrapping around the divine tower. Now, we know that Elden Ring Nightreign is a spin-off. It is not technically canon to Elden Ring lore, but it does make you ask, is this similar to what's going on with the Erd tree, with it seeming to have been built around a stone building? And it was always a pretty prominent question in the base game of what the true nature of the divine towers was. What was their true purpose for being built? Maybe they were originally meant to be the guiding bases for trees. Given that divinity is seen in a spiral and a double helix in Elden Ring, I think it's an idea at least worth considering. Again, Nightreign is not canon, it's just a spin-off, but I think things like this can give us a new frame of reference for looking back on some of the questions we had in Elden Ring. And for the final one today, while you were playing through Nightreign, did you happen upon any illusory walls? Or at least illusory floors? Because this is Elden Ring after all, can't forget about those. So as you're exploring the ruins, don't forget to check for illusory floors or illusory walls. They exist, and they're hiding loot behind them. I know it certainly slipped my mind while I was playing. And that goes for other things that are present in Elden Ring as well that you'll likely forget about while you're playing, such as upgrading your weapon. Don't forget about smithing stones being in the game, and if you're like me, you probably saw the first one and wondered how to get the rest. Well, like I said, it slipped my mind, so I don't have footage of it, but from what I've read from other people, smithing stone 2s can be found in the mines, and ancient dragon smithing stones can be obtained from the ancient dragon in the Everjail, but likely only 1 per run. You might have also noticed the statues that are breakable that contain smithing stones in the base game. Those can also be found around the world. You will need a giant monster to break them, but I've also heard they can be broken with Guardian's ultimate ability. So hopefully you didn't forget about all that like I did. Anyways, look guys, those are just a few discoveries we made in the Elden Ring Nightreign closed network test. We still have a long way to go before release, but I wanted to share a few of these regardless. Hopefully I showed you something that you didn't already know, and if I did, be sure to remember to leave a like on the video. But with all that, I hope you enjoyed. Remember to subscribe if you're new around here, and I will catch you in the next one.